Numerous reports over the last couple of years around the labor force have talked about how women were impacted at a higher level than men. But while the pandemic has eased quite a bit in recent months, it appears that women are still well behind in that loss of jobs. A recent report by the National Women's Law Center says that as of January of this year, there were still 1 million fewer women in the workforce than there were in February of 2020, right before the pandemic hit. Michele Meyer-Shipp is CEO of Dress for Success, whose organization's mission is to empower women to achieve economic independence through support on a variety of fronts. She joins us to talk about the state of this issue right now. Michele, great to have you with us. Thanks for a few moments.
Thanks, Dan. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Before we dig into the issues of now, let me take you back to January and February of 2020, pre-pandemic, and what you thought the state of women in the workforce was at that point, because it seemed like it was getting better.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, women were making great strides out there in the workforce, and the trends were looking positive, that we were making gains at every level of the workforce, and we were seeing more women moving into leadership roles, more women, getting access to board seats and things of that nature. And then, boom, here comes the pandemic.
And so now here we are 2.5 years later. As I mentioned, 1 million fewer women in the workforce than there were in February 2020. How much of that do you think is still related to the pandemic? Or are some of these most recent issues around inflation and how companies are slowing hiring and some of the labor impacts, are they playing a role as well?
Yeah, Dan, that's a great question. I mean, I think several of these things are having an impact on women's ability to gain jobs in the workforce. I mean, I think the pandemic it has made a big blow on women in the workforce. But in addition to that, to your point, inflation has had an impact. I think actually the climate change crises that we're navigating has had an impact. Supply chain shortages has had an impact, and caregiving. And caregiving issues have had an impact. There are so many different nuances to this that make this situation challenging for women. It really is. We've got a lot of work to do to dig out of this.
Well, expand on the caregiving, because I've talked about it a few times, but I think in general, I think that issue, whether it be, the lack of daycare, the loss of lack of daycare that we've had in this country, or more people tending to older individuals, their family members, I think that story at times has kind of somewhat been undersold as to how vital it actually is.
It has been undersold. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, so many issues have come up around this. I mean, to your point, women are home not only taking care of their children, but they're taking care of, older family members with disabilities, et cetera. And it's interesting. There's been a lot of research on this, and some recent stats actually pointed out that during the course of the pandemic, women took on an additional 173 additional hours of unpaid child care during the first year of the pandemic, as compared to 59 additional hours for men. So think about that. Women, 173 additional hours of child care, as compared to men, 59 additional hours. And then when you look at, communities, low income, middle income communities and countries, those figures were even higher. So women were taking on over 200 hours of unpaid child care, as compared to 70 hours for men. So even though we have seen more men at home, more men helping with childcare, women still bear the brunt of the care when it comes to the family.
So then talk about the work that Dress for Success is trying to do right now, especially in the scope of what's occurred over the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. We're really excited to be at the forefront of helping women achieve economic independence, through gainful employment all around the world. We have 144 affiliates in 23 countries, and our focus really is on providing women with the support that they need to get into the workforce. Most of the women we serve are either unemployed or underemployed, and during the course of the pandemic, our client base of underemployed women grew significantly. And I think one of the big things that the pandemic really helped us spotlight for folks is that Dress for Success for the last 25 years has been known by most as the organization where women go when they need to get clothes for job interviews. But what people came to realize during the pandemic is that we provide many more services than that. In fact, over the last 2 years, even virtually and online, we have been able to provide women with career development support, helping them with job readiness, helping them with skills development, networking, and a community of support to help them gain access back into the workforce, to help them build confidence, and to help them secure financial well-being and independence.
I think speaking of things that have kind of gone undersold is the value of networking. I think we knew about it. A lot of people did pre-pandemic, but in this dynamic we're in right now of, more work from home as a component of the workforce, I think the question of networking really, I think, takes another step up in terms of its importance as we move forward.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dan. It's actually funny you say that, because as I think about this, before, when we were in person in workplaces predominantly, it was a lot easier to meet people, go to lunch, grab a coffee, take a walk, have a chat. And so you naturally, organically would meet and run into people day after day. You'd be in meetings that you might not otherwise get invited to remotely. So it really is important through this new kind of virtual way that we're navigating the world still to really be strategic about connecting people to networks. And one of the ways we actually are really excited to do that through our Dress for Success online community is to connect women to each other around the world and to connect women to our corporate partners so that they can gain access and insights, into careers that are available to them in many different industries all over the world. So networking is absolutely critical, and I'm really happy to see the work that we're doing to help women get connected not only with each other and with mentors, but again, with our corporate partners who can help them gain access to employment opportunities.
So that element of remote work that I talked about, I think at times it does make it a challenge to connect because, one, the workday has kind of expanded in many cases. It's not necessarily 9 to 5. It's become 8 to 6 with a break in the middle. And, you may have to duck out and get the kids from school, whatever that component is. But it is still a very important element to try and connect with a coworker or somebody from another company, or, to be able to have that as part of your normal process, even if your 8-hour day is now broken up over three sections over the course of the day.
No, absolutely right. It really is. It does require every one of us to be really strategic in how we use that time, how we make connections, how we set up kind of standing touch-base meetings with the people we need to network with, and how we find online communities and groups and networks to, connect with on a regular basis. It's been fascinating. Remote work, I think, has helped women gain access back into the workplace. In fact, there was an article in a Pew newsletter recently that said that women's employment gains over the past several months, the past 6 to 8 months, has actually outpaced men. But what I think is going to be really interesting is to see how sustainable this long-term remote process is, in particular for women, going back to what I stated before, because they are literally carrying the bulk of the burden as it relates to caregiving responsibilities. So it's great to get the job. It's great to have the opportunity to work remotely. But is this sustainable? And how do we navigate issues of burnout and trying to manage multiple jobs at the same time?
And I think that part of that then falls back on the leaders of these companies, because I have had that same thought process that, we might be in this now, but there's nothing that says in 3 years, 5 years, whatever that time window is, that companies just say, okay, that's enough, everybody back in the office. And
that's right.
A lot of these dynamics, on the personal side for a lot of people are not going to change in that time frame.
That's right. That's absolutely right. It's going to be interesting. It really is. And I think, this is where, for organizations, really thinking about talent retention, talent engagement, and how they are, considering the needs of their employees is ever so critical, so that they can maintain, top talent across the organizations.
So I understand that one of the things you do a variety of events over the course of the year, one coming up later this month as well, correct? A virtual power walk that you're doing.
Yes, I'm really excited about that. So we're going to host a virtual power walk in partnership with our presenting sponsor, Arm& Hammer. It's on August 27th and 28th, and we're doing this in solidarity with women around the globe. And it really is all about raising awareness in the need to really create change for women, empower women to achieve economic independence, which helps them strengthen not only their own stance in the workforce and in the community, but it strengthens their families and their communities. For every dollar raised from this walk, those dollars will support Dress for Success. Dress for Success's mission to empower women around the world. And we will deploy all of the funds raised from that across our 144 affiliates so that they can work directly with the women coming in and out of their doors every day in need of our support. So we're really excited about that. And folks can find out more about that on our website at dressforsuccess.org.
So kind of a twofold question here next then. As you're looking out the next couple of years, what do you think needs to occur, both short-term and long-term, to get the levels of female employment back to where they were pre-pandemic and even more so beyond that in the years ahead?
That's a great question. I mean, I think we need to do a couple things. First, we need to make sure that women have access to these opportunities. You know, how do women get access to knowing where the opportunities are and how to get exposure to interviews for those opportunities? I think the other thing we have to do is we have to upskill and reskill women. One of the recent studies that I read suggested that the types of jobs that women are coming back to are different than the types of jobs they had before. So when we look at that, it really does require us, and we're doing this at our own organization, we're thinking about what are the skills gaps that we need to help solve for women so that they are prepared and skilled up for the jobs that are ready now and in the future of the workforce. So when I think about tech and STEM jobs and artificial intelligence and cybersecurity and all of those types of things, we really need to prepare women to take jobs in that space because, again, we are coming back to the workforce taking on very different roles than we had in the past. And then, again, that support and that continued professional development is ever so critical. So we need access, we need skilling, we need to provide the opportunity, and we need to support one another.
I would think that there is also somewhat of a benefit, and this is something that I've heard anecdotally, and I think it's still developing as well, is the fact that companies themselves are valuing the skills and the upskilling that's necessary for their employees because of the concerns of losing them to another firm and then having to fill that job. And we've talked on this show a lot about the cost that HR has to incur in filling that job off of somebody that left for another company.
Oh, that's so right, Dan. So it's actually, as an HR, professional, I can tell you it costs more to replace an employee than it does to keep and develop the employee. So I know for a fact that many companies are really focused in right now on employee retention, employee engagement, and employee development. It really is all about doing that to make sure you have your folks, again, ready for the jobs of the future, and you can retain that talent because there is a war for talent right now. And companies that are not on their game are going to lose out on their top talent who will go off to other companies who will provide them with the support and development that they need.
So then why do you think it has taken us that long to get to that mindset? Because that is something that's been talked about for a long time, is that the companies for the longest period of time didn't want to invest in the upskilling. They felt it was a burden on their bottom line.
Yeah, it's funny. I think the pandemic really caused organizations to have to really zone in on paying attention to the cries out from their employees. So often, companies operate by kind of the business model and what the business objectives are and the business goals. It's all about the business. It's all about the bottom line. But the pandemic really forced employers to have to stop and hear the input and the needs of their employees. And I think it was through that look in the mirror with employees to hear about the challenges, to hear about the needs, that there was this uncovering of this hunger and this need for this development, engagement and support. And when companies started to see, people flee, the Great Resignation, they realized, okay, they're telling us they need this. They're flying out the door. If we don't double down and focus on this, we are not going to be able to keep our talent. And the bottom line is, without the people, you can't get the work done. So I think it happened. I think the pandemic kind of was the linchpin that got people to really wake up and pay attention to something that, as an HR professional, I've known for years. But unfortunately, It's taken, some business leaders a really long time to figure it out. And unfortunately, it took a pandemic to shine a spotlight on it.
Again, for women that would like to find out more about the Power Walk, what's the best way for them to go about it? Through your website?
Yes, dressforsuccess.org. All the information is there, and then also through our social media channels. We are on all the social media channels, and over the coming days and weeks, we will have plenty of social media posts all about the Power Walk and how people can sign up and participate virtually.
All right. Michele, pleasure to have you with us. Thanks for a few moments.